The rain pounded on the roof of our '78 Mustang, as if beating out the soundtrack to my broken heart. In just 12 hours, I was supposed to put on a white dress and pledge my loyalty to the man who had trampled it into the mud. John. My John. It turns out, he wasn't mine alone. The note fell out of his jacket pocket when I was packing it for the dry cleaners. A delicate pink piece of paper, smelling of cheap perfume that I would never wear. John, I can't wait for tomorrow night after your boring wedding. Yours, Catherine. Boring. That word hurt almost more than the fact of the betrayal. My whole life, our future, was boring to him. The panic, sharp and icy, gave way to a strange, frightening calm. Tears? Hysteria? Call off the wedding? Too easy. Too ordinary for such betrayal. He stole our story from me. I decided to give him a new one he would never forget. My accomplice was Alex, my friend from college, who always looked at John with quiet disapproval. When I told him my plan, he wasn't surprised. He just sighed heavily and said, "Connie, he deserves it. I'm in." The wedding dinner went off without a hitch. John was beaming, hugging me, whispering dirty jokes in my ear. I smiled back, but inside I was screaming. I poured him whiskey, lots of whiskey, and then, when he was cheerful and drunk, I crushed 2 sleeping pills that had been prescribed to me after my father's death into his last glass. "Here's to us, dear," I said, clinking glasses with him. He drank it all. Half an hour later, he was snoring on the sofa like a baby. Defenseless. Silly. Alex helped drag him into the car. We took him away from our cozy suburban home, from our fake life, and drove him to an old, abandoned mansion on the outskirts of town that Alex had inherited from his uncle. The place was perfect. No neighbors, just the creaking of trees and the howling of the wind in the cracks. We dragged John upstairs to a room with peeling wallpaper and tied him to an old armchair with cable ties, securely, but without bruising him. I wanted him to see and feel everything. Only that way. While Alex was changing, I put on my wedding dress. It was gorgeous. Lace, pearls, a fluffy skirt, sexy, tight stockings. I put on bright lipstick and eyeliner. I looked like a whore, cold and perfect. The room where we had moved John was spacious, with glass inserts once covered by velvet curtains. Now they hung in tattered shreds. I pulled them aside. In the living room, Alex was waiting for me in a tuxedo that we had picked up from the rental shop that morning. He looked uncomfortable, but his gaze was steady. "Ready?" I asked. "Are you sure, Connie?" he asked. I just nodded in response. We turned off the lights in his room, leaving only a dim nightlight shining on his face. In our room, we turned on several powerful lamps that Alex had brought from the studio. We were like on stage. My wet skin glistened, and my ample breasts looked especially beautiful as they protruded from my corset. I poured a little ammonia into John's mouth. He coughed, blinked, and slowly opened his eyes. At first, his gaze was filled with nothing but confusion and a hangover haze. He tried to move, realized he was tied up, and his eyes widened in horror. "Connie? What's going on?" I walked over to the glass and pressed my palm against it. "The wedding, dear. Did you forget?" He stared at my dress, at Alex in his tuxedo behind me. "What the hell? Alex? Connie, let me go. This isn't funny." "Oh, I'm not joking, John." My voice was icy and even. "You wanted a spectacle. Today, you'll get one." I turned to Alex. His gaze was full of pity. For me, he knew this was self-sacrifice. The adrenaline intoxicated me more than any whiskey. I stepped toward Alex, hugged him, and kissed him. Not tenderly, like with John, but greedily, demonstratively. "No!" John shouted, jerking in his chair. "Connie, stop! What are you doing?" I pulled away from Alex, keeping my eyes on John. I just smiled and continued kissing Alex. My fingers slowly crept toward the zipper on the back of my dress. "You said our life was boring, John. I'm just adding a little variety." The zipper came undone with a silky rustle. My breasts immediately spilled out. The dress fell to my feet. I stood before him in my underwear, bought especially for our wedding night. I saw how he looked at me, not with desire, but with animal horror and awareness of his own powerlessness. Alex came up behind me, his arms around my waist. I threw my head back on his shoulder, not taking my eyes off John, and kiss him again. His face contorted with rage and despair. He screamed, cursed, begged. I let Alex pull me down to my knees. I greedily devoured his flesh. Drool ran down my chin and dripped onto my chest. The slurping sounds of my mouth echoed throughout the house. Afterwards, we sank down onto the old dusty carpet, which Alex had covered with a clean sheet. Every touch, every kiss was a dagger to the heart of my ex-fiancé. Alex pushed me hard. My screams echoed throughout the house. It was so rough. I was getting wetter and wetter with each passing second. I looked over Alex's shoulder straight at John. In his eyes, I saw his world, his male ego, his lies crumble. After a while, John stopped screaming. He just sat and stared, and there was nothing left in his eyes but emptiness. I felt the same emptiness inside myself. When the show ended, I got up, all wet after a vigorous workout with Alex, and walked over to the glass, licking Alex's sticky liquid off my fingers. John wasn't looking at me. He was staring at a spot on the floor, his body limp. "Congratulations, John," I whispered. "Now we both have a shameful secret. Yours is just silly and petty. Mine broke you." We left him there, tied up, in the dark. As I left, I threw my wedding bouquet of lilies onto his lap. He returned home 2 days later. He had lost weight, and his hands were shaking. He tried to say that it had been a nightmare, that he would forgive everything. But I just smiled, that same doll-like smile, and said, "What nightmare, dear? You must be hallucinating after drinking. You know I would never do such a thing. I'm your boring Connie." He looked at me, and I could see the horror in his eyes. He realized there was no evidence. It was just his word against mine, and only the three of us knew the truth. The truth that became his curse. I felt no joy. I felt no triumph. I cut the love for him out of my heart along with a piece of myself. But as I watched him frantically gather his things, I realized one thing. Sometimes the most terrible revenge is not physical pain, but eternal knowledge. The knowledge of what a woman is capable of when everything has been taken away from her. And I gave him that knowledge. In luxurious, blood-red packaging.